Welcome everyone. Welcome to, I guess, the trailhead to our Birchwood Trail System and the Doug Barnes Cabin. We're here today as a launch for our Northern Roots Compost program. And with spring just around the corner, we thought this would be the ideal time to announce our compost and share it with you. So we'd like to invite you, all of our residents, to come up to this area throughout the summer. We have a demonstration garden that we're going to be growing some plants, and you can see how our Northern Roots compost works, how effective it is. And we're also going to invite you to some public information sessions to learn more about compost, and you can ask some of our experts and some of our municipal staff about the compost. First session is going to be at the Spring Trade Show at Mac Island, coming up in a couple weeks here, and you'll be able to speak with fellas like myself. And just to introduce myself, my name is Will Collins, and I work in communications, and I'm helping out with promoting a bit of this program, our Northern Roots program. And I've also invited some of our subject matter experts out today to speak about the compost. So we're going to do a bit of an overview of Northern Roots compost and how it's made. So we're going to talk about some of the advantages of the compost and how we as a municipality plan to use the compost around the region, and what's to be expected in the couple weeks with our information sessions. And then at the end, we'll have a bit of a question and answer session. If you have any questions and if you'd like to interview any of our experts, you're welcome to do so. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Mr. James Sacker. He's a manager at the wastewater treatment plant, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the origins of our compost, where it comes from, and how the process begins. So, James.
Great, thank you, Will. So I'm James Sacker. I'm the manager of the wastewater treatment branch. Our team is responsible for where all the magic starts on the building of the Northern Roots compost. So in wastewater treatment, there's two streams that need to be treated. One is the liquid stream and one is the solid stream. Our end result is that we end up with a regulatory compliant product that gets discharged to the Athabasca River. That's the liquid portion of the treatment. The solids is a little bit more complicated. That's where we look at the Northern Roots, making the Northern Roots compost. So we start off by taking the biosolids, which are a mixture of all the solids that come to the wastewater treatment plant for processing. And we take these solids and we end up dewatering them, and then they go into compost tunnels. Now these tunnels are a mixture of the biosolids and wood chips that are sourced both locally as well as through recycled materials that come in through the landfill. So after 21 days of curing, we end up with a primary product, or the primary compost, that will then be transported to the landfill for final curing. I think so.
Great. All right, thanks, James. So that's how the process begins at the wastewater treatment plant. And like James says, we're going to be moving over to the landfill where the rest of the process is completed. And with that, I'm gonna invite Fred Thompson Brown to speak a little bit about the process at the landfill. Fred.
Thank you, Will. Right, the landfill is basically the curing stage of the compost process. So in a nutshell, the loads come to us via the wastewater treatment plant vehicles, offloaded onto the compost pad, at which point we would then sort of organise the rows, well, the compost into long rows. They're all recorded by date and obviously the time that they actually arrive on site. What we do then is basically help move the compost process along by watering and turning the individual windrows or rows up the compost pad. Each row stays with us for at least 4 to 6 months, and in which time we obviously check the temperatures and obviously the moisture content of the compost. When we actually get to the end of the process, we see a distinct sort of decline in temperature, which basically means the microbes have done their job. and the compost is nearing maturity. So we test the compost, and again we're not just testing temperature but also microbial action and some analytical testing on the actual compost. At which point, when we've met all our criteria as far as finished product is concerned, we then screen the compost, taking out the larger components of wood chip that's still remaining. They actually go back to the wastewater treatment plant as new feedstock and for the initial stage. And also at the same time, any untreated wood that we receive at the landfill, we chip up and send that along as well. So once the actual compost has been screened, the compost is then left. We actually then do a secondary testing on it, and that very much determines the grade of compost that we have. The whole process is on an industrial scale. We are looking at initial source of around about 29 to 31,000 tonnes coming onto the compost pad. There's quite a sizable reduction in amount of material, and we are currently looking at somewhere in the region of about 30 or 40,000 tonnes finished product on the pad now, which is the amalgam from all of 2016 and the beginnings of 2017. And at which point we're then available to then pass on to our end users, which can be obviously our own internal departments such as parks, but also engineering, and in the future hopefully we'll be looking at supplying to residential customers as well. So. Okay.
Thanks, Fred. And I forgot to mention earlier, Fred is a manager of solid waste services, and he's our local professional at the landfill. As Fred had said, this is going to be used by some of our end users in our organization, and one of those end users is our Parks Department. So I'd like to call up Nina Keynes to speak a little bit about some of her plans for using the Northern Roots Compost.
Hello, and thank you. I'd like to thank Fred and James, both those teams, for working on this and putting it together for us. Compost has been used like this throughout many communities in Alberta and across Canada. And it's nice to see it finally coming into Fort McMurray. For us right now, we've got some test beds started over here to see how the compost is going to do. Once we get the regulatory approvals and everything and all their Class A's and that, we would like to start using it on our boulevards, on our fields, on our green spaces. As you know, Fort McMurray doesn't get a lot of rain. And with composting your fields and composting the boulevards and that, it allows it to hold on to the little bit of water we get. It allows it to aerate the soil. It allows it to change the soil, and good for the root system. So we're hoping to be able to see a little bit more grass and greener boulevards, greener parks, and at a lot less expensive. These guys are helping us get to that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Nina. And that's the end of the presentation portion, but we're going to open it up to, I was going to say open up the floor, but I guess we'll open up the lawn to questions. If we have anybody in the audience that has some questions, there's a microphone just over by our camera section there. If you want to ask some questions, our guest speakers are going to come up here, and you feel free to ask some questions. Come on up. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, sure.
If you could introduce yourself first, that'd be awesome.
I'm Melanie Walsh, and I'm with Country 93.3 and Rock 97.9. And I was just wondering, eventually when all this compost has been tested, is there a plan in place at all for residents to be able to come pick up some compost to use in their own home gardens?
That is the long-term plan. There are some logistics, obviously, because obviously the landfill and obviously the compost pad is a very busy environment. So what we'll be looking at is either packaging or having drop-off areas such as community gardens where there'll be an opportunity to take away material on that sort of basis.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I actually have a couple of questions for you. This is Will Collins from Communications Department. Some of my colleagues have asked me throughout the process of this project if the Northern Roots Compost has an odor. Would you be able to speak to that at all?
The only odour, realistically speaking, is absolutely no different to the same odour that you'd have with commercially bought compost. So it's basically got a humus, earthy smell. Realistically speaking, you will see that it looks exactly the same as shop bought compost. It's in many respects it's exactly the same materials that produce it in the first place.
Excellent, thank you. Another quick question for you. Are you familiar with other municipalities with similar programs? Is this a common I guess, practice?
Yes, there's a whole range of other communities across Alberta and also Canada that utilises the compost from the same source, as well as a whole range of other materials. And as you can probably pick up from, well, I don't have an accent, but my dialect is very much the case that this is not uncommon for virtually all countries across the world, realistically speaking.
I think on the website we will be listing some of the other communities that are doing this, and also the name that they're selling under. So what you bought out of Calgary or out of Edmonton or out of sometimes in Ontario, Quebec, you might have known it as compost, and just the name that's on it, and not known that it is made in their facilities. But on the website there will be other communities and the names associated with those communities of what they're selling, which is the same type of stuff.
So we're wondering, is the compost safe, and should I worry about my kids or my pets around this Northern Roots compost?
All forms of compost are obviously highly regulated, purely for that exact same reason. We are obviously being very mindful about the compliance component, and hence why you would have heard from each of the stages there's a whole range of analytical tests that we have to meet before we can actually move it on to the next aspect. Certainly when it comes to providing this material to the public, which again is our long-term plan, there is yet another analytical requirement which we have to achieve before we can do that.
Is that everything? Yeah. I think we're good. Excuse me, I'll just wrap it up. Okay, unless there are any other questions, I guess we can wrap it up. For those of you looking for more information, you can visit our website. It's rmwb.ca/Northern Roots, and you can find out more information about Northern Roots. We'll be posting the video of this, I guess, information session online. We also have other information videos, infographics, and FAQs. Again, rmwb.ca/Northern Roots. Thanks everyone for coming out today, and have a nice day.